Hey guys, tonight we enter the hush of ancient Egypt, not through the grand doors of temples or the blazing sun of market streets, but into a dim house where the air feels thick and silence has weight. Your morning begins not with birdsong, but with a knock at the door, a sound too deliberate, too early, too final. You rise, bones creaking like reeds in the wind, and open the wooden door to a figure dusted in sand, eyes lowered. The messenger does not step inside. He doesn't need to. Just a single sentence, no emotion in the voice, and the entire architecture of your life tilts. Your husband is gone. He died before sunrise. The words fall into your lap like broken pottery, and you don't yet know how to gather them. Before we begin, if you find these stories relaxing or interesting, you can subscribe, share the video, or leave a comment to support the channel. Every bit of encouragement gives me the motivation to keep making videos every single day. And tell me, where are you listening from? And what time is it there? There is no scream, not yet. In your mind, you move to reach for something: his tunic, his sandals, the last bowl he ate from. But your body doesn't obey. You are neither here nor gone. Outside, the street is already warming. Sunlight slants across mud brick walls, painting them gold as if nothing has changed. But inside, everything has collapsed into a new, unfamiliar geometry. One without him. In ancient Egypt, mourning is not an improvised response. It is choreographed, expected, almost rehearsed. A death initiates a sequence of gestures, clothing, silence, and sound. You begin the process by sitting low to the floor, on woven reed mats reserved for mourning. Someone, maybe his sister, gently removes your jewelry, your cosmetics. Coal is washed away with date water. Your hair is unbound and combed until it lies loose. You are not to look composed. You are to be undone. The room fills as if drawn by some unseen force. Neighbors arrive with folded hands, eyes scanning. They don't ask what happened. They already know. Word moves faster than grief. Some murmur prayers. Some bring jars of beer and bunches of lotus. One brings salt and natron, not for you, but for him. Someone will need to begin the preparations. You remain still, even as voices rise around you. The weeping begins, but it doesn't emerge naturally. It is an offering. In ancient Egypt, mourning sounds were believed to guide the soul safely to the afterlife. To wail too little was to risk letting your beloved wander, lost in the duat, the realm of the dead. So they wail, not from their hearts, but from their throats. It is a practiced shriek, a keening learned across generations. You realize, almost with embarrassment, that your own sobs are too quiet. But this is not your performance anymore. A neighbor glances at you. It's subtle. You don't cry loudly enough. You don't claw at your skin. You don't tear your linens. The performance of grief is communal, and any misstep becomes a whisper. Not dramatic enough? Not devoted enough? Perhaps you never loved him properly. Perhaps you only married him for the garden behind his father's house. The implications are unspoken, but they settle like dust on your shoulders. You remain seated as the day heats. The walls begin to glow amber, and sweat slides down your back. A servant is sent to fetch two women from the edge of town. You know their names. Everyone does. They are the professional mourners, women who are paid to weep at funerals. Their hair is never styled. They coat themselves in dust and carry carved images of Isis and Nephthys, the two divine sisters who once mourned Osiris. When they arrive, You must not look them in the eye. They will cry in your place, scream his name into the sky, beat their chests raw. Their bodies are their instruments. Their sorrow is theater, sacred and staged, and it is more convincing than your own. Historians still debate the true role of these mourning women. Were they genuine figures of empathy, or tools of ritual pageantry, designed to heighten the emotional stakes and ward off spirits? Some scholars argue their cries mirrored spells, shaping the dead's passage like oars stir water. Others suggest they existed more for the living cleansing, resetting, and publicly proving grief, so private hearts wouldn't have to. The sun rises higher. You're moved from the floor to a stool near the doorway. It's not symbolic, it's practical. The body will soon arrive. Not the wrapped, elegant mummy of later imagination, but the raw, still form of a man who once laughed at your clumsy bread baking. He is to be washed, anointed, wrapped, but first he must be received. You do not touch him. That task belongs to others. Your grief is not hands-on. It is observational, passive, intense in its stillness. Someone offers you water. You don't drink. The cup feels foreign in your fingers. You stare instead at the courtyard wall, where flies drift lazily between figs. You remember him laughing here, once, barefoot, throwing date pits at the cat. A moment unremarkable then. Now it pulses, bright and unbearable. The past is sharpest when it's freshest. And then comes the sound. A cart, wooden wheels squeaking. Your sister gasps. It's time. But this is not the funeral yet. This is only the beginning. There is a quirky truth hidden beneath all this ritual. In some regions, it was believed that the dead could overhear excessive grief and feel insulted. Mourners had to balance devotion and discretion, lest the spirit grow annoyed and refuse to bless the family. Hence, certain tomb texts include not only prayers, but polite reminders not to cry too loudly. Do not upset him, one ostracon warns, or he may bring the plague. The women rise as the cart halts outside. A man's voice calls out, respectful but impatient. They lift the bundle wrapped in linen, but not yet sanctified, and carry it across the threshold. You are expected to stand. Just once, you do. Your knees shake. This is the last time he will enter this house. A new phase begins now. His body will be purified, dried, wrapped, decorated, and prepared for the great journey ahead. Yours, though, is only beginning to unravel. You sit again, barely breathing. The walls seem to pulse inward, the house adjusting to its missing piece. And outside, the desert exhales. You spend the rest of that first day somewhere in between. Not in the land of the living, but not quite among the dead. The walls of your home seem to blur at the edges, as if the sun itself recoils from grief. You are not alone, but you feel completely unanchored. A cousin arrives to help prepare the bread, not for you, but for the guests who will pass through in the coming days. A neighbor brings a folded shindig for the priests. The house is no longer yours. It belongs to ritual now. That night, you lie on a reed mat, eyes open in the dark, and listen to the sounds of quiet activity. Someone is boiling oils for anointing. Someone else is stitching linen strips. The embalmers will work at sunrise, and they will need these things ready. You are not allowed to witness the full embalming process. Few women are, but you know the rhythm by heart. Remove the organs, dry the body with natron, pack the cavities with resin and linen, wrap with care. Insert amulets at key joints. Speak protective prayers. Wrap again. Repeat. It is not a gruesome task in your world. It is sacred. A body is not discarded. It is prepared for eternity. The embalmers are not butchers. They are custodians. What they do is watched by Anubis himself, or so your elders say. The god with the jackal's head judges not only the weight of hearts, but the care taken in preparing what was once human. A rushed wrapping, a misplaced amulet, a prayer whispered too quickly. These are not minor mistakes. They are failures of love. You are reminded of something your husband once said during a festival, that people fear death because they don't fear ritual enough. You didn't understand then. Now, as you lie still in the silence of absence, you begin to understand. Mourning in Egypt is not loud all the time. Sometimes it is quiet because the world holds its breath around you. In the morning, you are given tasks, small ones. You crush herbs, myrrh, and cinnamon bark for the oils. You fold clean linens into neat stacks, feeling their edges like reassurance. You grind blue pigment for the eye paints the mummy will wear. These things matter. Presentation matters. A well-dressed body pleases the gods. Death in Egypt is not an ending, it's a reunion, but only if the departed is properly dressed for the journey. Among the more curious customs, at least to outsiders, is the practice of inserting small wax figures of shabdi into the wrappings. You've seen them. Tiny servants for the afterlife, molded with delicate tools, sometimes given names. Your husbands were made last year during the plague season when everyone feared they might need them. You touch the jar that holds them. They feel cold and smooth. Each one represents a chore your husband might otherwise have to do in the field of reeds. Harvesting, milling, digging canals. Death comes with to-do lists. Historians still debate whether these figures were truly believed to work or whether they served more symbolic roles. Some argue they were magical insurance policies. If the gods came demanding labor, the figures would stand in. Others say it was a metaphor, a reminder that even in death, a man should not be idle. Either way, their presence is expected. No tomb is complete without them. No afterlife can begin unless the tools of work and worship accompany the soul. By the third day, the wrapping is nearly complete. The scent in the home is strange. Resin and sweat, myrrh and grief. You no longer cry, not because you feel better, but because your tears have hollowed you out. The wailing is moved outside now. Near the temple gate, the professional mourners perform their final rites. Their voices soar like birds, then plunge like stones. Some strangers gather to watch. You feel exposed, as though grief has made your skin translucent. Inside, the mummy is being placed into its coffin. Not the gilded kind you imagine in noble tombs, but a painted wood box with simple spells along the edges. His name is written there, next to prayers for protection. He is now justified, a legal term for the dead. It means he has passed judgment. It means he is welcome beyond. A priest brings a jar of beer to your hands. You are to anoint the coffin with it. Not wine, not water. Beer, because it is both humble and powerful. It was said that the goddess Sekhmet was once calmed with beer dyed red to resemble blood. The drink connects the living and the divine. You pour slowly, your hands shaking, the liquid forming small rivers along the painted wood. The crowd falls silent. This is your act. This is your farewell. And yet, the procession has not even begun. As the sun lowers, preparations shift. The men carry the coffin to the doorway. You are given a sash of white linen to tie around your waist, a marker of mourning. Some widows wear it for weeks, others for years. It identifies you to strangers. It tells the market vendor, the priest, the girl at the water well, this woman has lost someone. Treat her with pause. You step into the courtyard and see the donkey cart waiting. It is not elegant, but it is strong. It will carry him to the necropolis, where the others wait, the grandparents, the cousins, the old fisherman who taught you to scale perch when you were too young to understand why anyone would kill a fish. The dead wait patiently, always. Among the oddest customs, perhaps, is that you are not to walk beside the body. That honor is for the male kin, even if you are the spouse. You trail behind, head low, flanked by the professional mourners who cry on your behalf. They do not know you, but they wail like they've lost a brother. Some tombs include scenes of these processions, long lines of figures with hands raised, mouths open in stylized grief. The accuracy of these images is debated. Did people really mourn that dramatically? Or were these just artistic exaggerations, designed to impress the gods or console the living? Scholars still wonder if these visual laments were memory or wishful reconstruction. The path winds along the riverbank, dust rising in little swirls beneath the sandals of the bearers. Children peek from doorways. Old men nod. The city makes room for mourning. Even the dogs seem to move aside. At the edge of the necropolis, you stop. You are not allowed to see the final ceiling. That, too, is a boundary. Life may walk the path of the dead, but not all the way. A priest recites the closing rites, invoking Anubis, Isis, and the ancestors. The sun sinks low. The air smells of stone and acacia sap. You remain standing as the others return to town. You need one more moment, not to speak, not to remember, just to exist near the place where he will now always be. The wind is gentle, the earth still warm, and in that moment, though you say nothing, the entire weight of mourning settles quietly into your chest, not heavy but permanent. You return home in silence, though the world around you churns in movement. The children in the courtyard resume their games, as if death passed by like a visitor and left no scent. The market opens, and the pomegranate sellers shout their prices. Laundry flaps from rooftop lines like signals from another realm. Your house is unchanged in structure, yet it feels rearranged by absence. One cup remains unused. One corner of the bed holds an indentation that won't rise again. There are dates in the jar he liked best, and no appetite to finish them. In the early days of mourning, you are kept deliberately busy. Tasks are assigned, not as punishment, but as scaffolding for a soul at risk of collapse. You help clean the threshold with natron and scented water, purifying the entrance so that no wandering spirit lingers too long. You set up small lamps in each corner of the room. Light, in Egyptian belief, does more than illuminate, it protects. Shadows invite the wrong kind of company. A well-lit home makes death's visit brief. You begin your seclusion, as is customary for widows in many regions of the Nile Valley. It isn't isolation exactly, but a gentling of your presence. You do not go to the market. You speak less at gatherings. You are not forbidden from joy, but discouraged from summoning it loudly. There is rhythm to it, 30 days, in some places, 70 in others. A period marked not by the calendar, but by the body's own tides. You do not wear black. Mourning here is marked with linen of pale color, a visual reminder of purity, not sorrow. Black is for later, perhaps, among foreign customs, but not for now. The household adjusts. Neighbors send broth. Distant cousins bring bundles of reeds for mats. Someone lends you a stool with carved lotus legs, believing it might help you sit longer, think softer. One afternoon, a woman from the temple visits to offer guidance. She speaks of rituals you may perform at home, lighting incense near his favorite place to sit, whispering his name 3 times each morning, leaving small offerings of water at dawn. These are not demands. They are invitations to keep the thread from fraying entirely. One of the more curious customs you've adopted without thinking is the placing of a cone of scented wax upon your head during formal rites. You'd done it before at festivals, worn the perfumed cone as celebration. But now it is different. The scent is heavier, muskier. It melts slowly with body heat, releasing fragrance through the hours, cloaking you in memory. Some scholars argue these cones were merely symbolic in paintings, but residues found on ancient wigs suggest they were real enough. In mourning, even scent becomes ritual. Historians still debate the precise meanings of many mourning gestures in ancient Egypt. Were women expected to perform public grief to validate the worth of the deceased? Or was their crying a genuine expression of cultural license, a rare space where emotion was not only accepted but expected? The truth may lie between performance and catharsis, tangled like a linen wrap around a memory too sacred to unfold. You begin to dream of him. Not every night, but often enough to take note. Sometimes he is whole and smiling. Sometimes he stands just beyond your reach, saying nothing, staring at the water. You don't speak of it. Not yet. Among your people, dreams of the dead are private things. Not secrets, but sacred interruptions. The grief does not come in waves, it comes in weather. Some days are windless and bearable. Others, it storms unexpectedly, leaving you soaked in a sadness you can't name. You are not alone, but loneliness visits you anyway, sitting beside you at meals like a familiar, unwelcome aunt. Still, you do the things you must. You feed the chickens. You mend the torn hem of your tunic. You refill the oil in the corner lamps, even when they no longer flicker. Your husband's sister begins to visit more often. She speaks in a careful voice, as if you are made of papyrus that might tear at any loud tone. She helps you with laundry, with mending, with arranging the modest shrine you've begun to build. At its center sits a carved wooden image of your husband, not a likeness, but a symbol. You arrange dried lotus petals around it. You whisper spells from memory. They are old, half-remembered, passed from women to women, not written on scrolls, but carried in breath and repetition. Among the small, strange details of mourning is a particular superstition. No weaving of new linen should begin until the 7th day has passed. To do so, it is said, would trap the soul mid-journey. So you leave your weaving frame empty, its shuttle silent, a loom waiting for permission to begin again. Whether this rule is ancient or merely local, no one can say for certain. But no one questions it. In mourning, even habits obey the dead. One evening, as dusk slips in like ink across parchment, you find yourself lighting the incense not for him, but for yourself. You place a pinch of dried frankincense on the ember, and as it sizzles into fragrant smoke, you close your eyes. The scent curls around your head like a question. You do not answer it. Instead, you sit quietly, letting the silence drape itself across your shoulders like a shawl. Grief has not lessened, but it has changed shape. And with that realization, a new rhythm begins, not of forgetting, but of remembering in ways that do not undo you. Your mourning is no longer the loud ritual of the funeral or the perfumed preparation of the corpse. It is quieter now, a private continuity, a conversation between you and memory, carried in the hush of incense, the weight of an untouched garment, the deliberate lighting of lamps as the sun dips low. There will come a day when you return to the market, a day when you laugh and do not flinch afterward, a day when you begin weaving again, but not today. Today, you sit near the small shrine, the sky darkening above, and allow yourself to simply be living, breathing, remembering. The day you leave the house again feels almost transgressive. The world beyond your courtyard has continued without pause market stalls brimming with figs and dates, donkeys braying beneath bundles of rushes, priests chanting from shaded temples. But for you, it's the first breath of something unfamiliar. Mourning was a veil that draped you gently, and now you are expected to pull it aside, not cast it off entirely, but lift it enough to walk beneath it in public light. Your neighbors watch with tactful curiosity. No one says anything, but their eyes linger just a second longer than usual. You walk slowly, the sash of linen still tied at your waist, now loosened, more symbol than statement. The path to the marketplace feels longer than you remember. You pass the barber's bench, the scribe's stall with its pots of black ink, the well where gossip gathers with every bucket. These things haven't changed. You have. Grief lingers like dust on sandals. It doesn't fall off just because the road smooths out. But still, there's something oddly comforting about the noise of trade. Sellers shout prices. Children weave between stalls with clay toy animals. A woman argues over the weight of lentils. Life insists on its presence. It doesn't need your permission to resume. You stop at a vendor you once favored. He sells small cakes sweetened with honey and dates, wrapped in woven reeds. You haven't tasted sweetness in weeks. You buy one, not because you're hungry, but because the act itself feels defiant, a soft rebellion against sorrow. And as you eat, quietly, in the shade of a wall, you realize that mourning in Egypt was never meant to be an end. It was meant to be a threshold. And thresholds are, by their nature, meant to be crossed. Your return to daily life is gradual, and in many ways, prescribed. You resume visits to family. You bring oil to the temple. You begin weaving linen again, carefully at first, as if the threads might snap if twisted too quickly. People speak to you without the weighted silence they once used. Even laughter, when it returns, feels like a memory reborn. But your mourning isn't gone. It's simply settled into a quieter place. One of the lesser-known customs, passed down more by habit than decree, is the tending of a memory jar. You keep one now. A small alabaster container where you place tiny items. A scrap of the linen from his burial shroud. A reed from the riverbank you walked together. A flake of blue faience from a broken amulet. None of it valuable. All of it priceless. No one tells you how long to keep such things. Some women keep their jars a lifetime. Others pour the contents into the Nile when they feel ready. There's no correct answer, only the truth that grief must be housed somewhere, or it leaks into places it shouldn't. Historians still debate the significance of personal mourning rituals in private homes versus formal temple rites. Did the state-sanctioned ceremonies override the personal? Or did they coexist in layers, the visible and the invisible, the sanctioned and the whispered? In Egypt, where gods walked with men and eternity was charted like a map, the line between public and private ritual was never entirely clear. You begin, slowly, to speak of him again, not as absence, but as memory. You mention the way he used to hum when fixing a broken basket. You tell a cousin how he once tried to bake bread and set half the oven on fire. These are not tragedies. They are offerings. Each story, a small token placed at the altar of remembrance. There is one night late, cool, fragrant, with crushed mint, when you feel something shift entirely. You are sitting outside, weeding by moonlight. The neighborhood quiets. Lamps flicker out one by one, and in that hush, you feel not loneliness, but presence. Not his, precisely, but yours. You have survived something, and not passively. You have carried mourning like a jar on your head, balanced, dignified, visible, and you have learned how to set it down gently, without shattering it. Among the more unusual beliefs you still carry is that the dead watch the living from the field of reeds, not as judges, but as companions. They tend gardens that mirror your own. They fish from rivers that reflect the Nile. When you laugh, it ripples there. When you weep, they feel the weight of it. It's not a belief you speak aloud, but you water the garden as though he might smell the marjoram. You sweep the threshold as if he might return. One day, as you pass the temple on your way to market, a young priest hands you a folded strip of papyrus. It contains a simple blessing. You don't know why he chose you. Perhaps it was the way you walked. Perhaps someone spoke of you. Or perhaps the gods, in their strange timing, decided your mourning had left a visible mark only the pious could see. The papyrus reads, "The mouth opens again. Let the heart speak." You don't carry it in your hand. You fold it carefully and place it in your memory jar. Grief does not disappear, but it changes costume. Where once it wore black coal and silence, now it wears soft laughter and the clink of water jars at dawn. You are not done mourning, but you are done beginning. And in Egypt, that, too, is a sacred transition. There is a tradition, old and largely unspoken, that the dead prefer to be visited on quiet days. Not festival days, not feast days, not in the bustle of public celebration, but on those still mornings when the wind is soft and the sun low, when the Nile carries the hush of temple chants and the birds circle without sound. It is on one of these mornings that you set out for the necropolis, alone. The road is familiar now, though your feet tread it with different weight. The last time you came, the air was thick with lament and incense. Today it is dry and sweet, touched with tamarisk blossom. You carry with you a small offering. Bread you baked yourself, a few sprigs of fresh mint, and a shallow bowl of cool water. It is not lavish, but then the dead are not greedy. They want remembering, not riches. You pass other mourners, an old man with a walking stick and a jug of beer, a mother with a clay doll in her arms, perhaps in memory of a child. No one speaks. Grief is fluent in silence. You nod, and they nod in return. There's a comfort in this shared wordlessness, as if all of you are walking beside the same ghost, each seeing it in a slightly different form. The tomb is humble, a single niche cut into limestone, barely tall enough for you to stand straight inside, but it is clean, well kept. Someone has swept recently. A sprig of dry papyrus lies near the threshold, possibly from a previous visitor. You place your offerings carefully bred to nourish, mint to refresh, water to soothe. Then you kneel, pressing your hands to the stone, and close your eyes. It's said that the veil between worlds is thinnest in these moments. that the dead lean close, listening not to words, but to intention. You speak nothing aloud. Instead, you let the memories come like the slow unraveling of linen moments tucked away behind the routines of surviving. The way he laughed through his nose, the calloused way he held your hand, the time he insisted on building a dovecote, only for the doves to ignore it entirely. The offering is complete when you rise, not when you feel ready. Readiness is not a measure the dead expect. They ask only for presence. There's a curious custom you've noticed among some of the older women who tend tombs regularly. They tap twice on the lintel before leaving. Once for goodbye, once for permission to go. You've never seen it written anywhere, but you do it anyway. 2 taps. A farewell and a blessing. Historians still argue about the personal rituals surrounding tomb visits. Some believe these practices were formalized, passed down from scribes and priests. Others see them as local, inherited through habit and repetition rather than doctrine. The truth, perhaps, is that ritual lives in the hands more than in the scroll. You begin the walk home slowly, your sandals brushing up fine dust with every step. The city grows louder as you approach. The clang of bronze tools, the squeal of oxen carts, laughter spilling from behind woven curtains. Life insists on its return, but you carry the stillness with you, like water in an unbroken jar. Over the next weeks, mourning shifts into something softer. You find yourself humming again. Not loudly, not often, but music returns like a bird, unsure if the branches can hold its weight. You begin helping at the temple, not in grand ceremonies, but in the quiet work of cleaning altars, fetching water, arranging fresh flowers. The priestesses nod at you, not as a mourner, but as a woman who understands how to move without disruption. There is, surprisingly, laughter too. It comes when you least expect it, when a goat eats your reed mat, or when a child smuggles honey cakes under her tunic. You do not resist it. Mourning does not forbid joy. It only asks that joy arrive with awareness. One morning, you're asked to assist with a rite for another woman's departed husband. She is young, younger than you were. Her hands tremble. Her sash is tied too tight, as if she hopes to hold herself together with fabric alone. You do not speak much, but your presence steadies her. You recognize the look in her eyes, the mix of disbelief and duty, the sense that everyone else knows what to do except her. You guide her gently through the process. How to place the oil, where to pour the beer, when to look away. It's not written, but you remember. And now, you are the one who shows the next in line. That night, as you sit near your small household shrine, you add something new, a carved lotus pendant you've kept since childhood. It has no connection to your husband directly, but it feels right. A sign that the shrine is no longer only his. It is yours. A space for memory and for growth. Grief has not ended, but it has made space for other things. Among the lesser-known practices of the time is the lighting of hope lamps during the new moon. Not for the dead, but for the living, to invite clarity, to mark passage. You light one now. It flickers uncertainly at first, then steadies. You do not pray. You simply watch the flame. You breathe. You let the silence wrap around you again, not as absence, but as stillness. And in that stillness, you understand something old and quiet and true. In Egypt, mourning is not about leaving the dead behind. It is about carrying them forward, folded into your steps, woven into your linen, pressed into the lines of your palms like seeds into clay. The night deepens. The house breathes gently around you. The lamp burns low, and you sit with it, not alone, not entirely, but whole enough to begin again. The season turns once more, and with it, the shape of your days. The Nile begins its slow swell, gathering rain from lands you'll never see, rising inch by inch against its banks, like a breath held too long. People talk of floods with half smiles and anxious hands. There is relief in its return, but also risk. The river gives, and the river takes. You know this now in more than metaphor. In your home, the rhythm of mourning has folded into the rhythm of living. You sweep the floor before sunrise. You grind grain before the temple drums begin their morning beat. You wear linen that is plain, but no longer purposely unadorned. The sharp edges of grief have worn smooth, like river stones still there, but dulled by time and movement. One afternoon, a neighbor asks if you will join the women preparing the shrine canopy for the goddess Hathor's festival. You hesitate only briefly. The festival is one of joy, of rebirth, of perfume and mirrors and dance. It feels strange to align yourself with celebration after so much silence. But you say yes. You always knew mourning would end, even if you didn't know how it would sound when it did. The preparation is as sacred as the ritual itself. You dye strips of cloth with ochre and saffron. You weave new garlands of lotus and papyrus. You paint wooden mirrors with cobalt blue. The canopy, when finished, gleams like something from the myths, rich and soft and dazzling. It will hang above the statue of Hathor as she is carried through the streets, and you, along with the others, will walk barefoot beside her, hands raised, voices low. There's a moment as you attach the final braid of fabric when you feel your chest rise with something like anticipation. It has been so long since you moved with purpose that was not rooted in survival. This, you realize, is something else. Not forgetting, but returning. The day of the festival arrives under a sky too blue to ignore. You wake before dawn, bathe in cool water, and scent your wrists with oil from a cracked alabaster jar. You tie your linen dress with careful hands. The sash you wear is not the one of mourning. This one is sky-colored, new. The choice is small, but it matters. Outside, drums begin to echo from the temple grounds. You join the procession barefoot, each step deliberate. The statue of Hathor emerges in its gilded bark, shaded by the canopy you helped build. Her face, serene and unblinking, glows in the early light. Around you, the women sing. The melody is old, braided with memory. You sing too, not loudly, not perfectly, but with intention. There is laughter in the crowd. Someone scatters petals along the path. Children dance beside their mothers. You feel eyes on you, not pitying, not sorrowful, but warm. You are not the widow anymore. You are the woman who returned, the one who stitched the canopy, the one who walks barefoot, face lifted. Quirky customs slip into the ritual almost unnoticed. At one point, women take turns gazing into polished copper mirrors to reflect the beauty of Hathor back to her. The belief is that joy itself is a gift to the goddess, and so showing your happiest face becomes an offering. You catch a glimpse of yourself in one such mirror. For the first time in months, you don't flinch. Historians still wonder whether festivals like this serve the living or the divine, or were they offerings or therapy? Did they heal or distract? But to you, standing in the warm sun, surrounded by flowers and music, the question fades. You are not a theory. You are here, singing. As the procession ends, you return home with tired feet and a lightness that feels foreign. You unpin your hair. You drink water sweetened with date syrup. You light incense at your household shrine, not in grief this time, but in gratitude. You do not speak his name, but you think it. And that is enough. Later that evening, a neighbor comes with news. There is a child in need of tending. Her mother is ill, her father away. Would you watch her for a day or two? You say yes before you can think. The girl arrives with wide eyes and a stubborn streak. She knocks over a water jug within the hour. You laugh. The sound surprises even you. In tending to her, you remember things you thought lost. Lullabies, the way to braid hair without pulling too hard, the gentle way to coax a child into sleep with a story and a warm cloth. Grief, it seems, did not erase your knowledge. It simply tucked it away, saving it for now. The girl stays longer than expected. You do not mind. Her presence fills the house with new sounds. When she leaves, she gives you a fig wrapped in cloth. You place it on the household shrine, not as an offering, as a reminder. One night, as you lie in bed, you think of the canopy, how the fabric caught the light, how the chanting echoed between the walls, how you sang. You fall asleep with the melody still in your head, and in your dream, you walk beside Hathor again. Only this time, you carry the canopy alone. It does not burden you. It floats above, weightless and gleaming, like a sky stitched from memory. Below it, you walk not mourning, not dancing, but simply moving forward. The next season arrives with sandstorms. Not the kind that sends entire caravans scattering, but the smaller kind, those restless, whispering winds that sneak through shutters and settle in folds of linen. The sort that make you squint even indoors and brush a light layer of dust over your thoughts. It is a strange thing how even the air itself in Egypt has moods. Today, it feels like everything has been stirred. You've grown used to the new rhythms of your life. But grief, as you've learned, is not a straight road. It loops back. It leaves little traps. You find one of them while cleaning the storage niche. A reed box you hadn't touched in months, wrapped in cloth and tucked behind jars of pickled cucumbers. Inside, a sashes, worn soft by sweat and sun, still knotted the way he left it. You sit there for a long time, the box open, the wind tapping at the wooden frame like a polite guest waiting to be let in. You don't cry, not exactly, but something inside you shifts, like a door creaking on its hinge. The dust settles around you. The sash is folded again, deliberately, and placed in your memory jar. People assume mourning is loud, theatrical, a river of wailing and black cloth. But often it is this quiet, granular, rediscovered in a box behind a jar. In Egypt, mourning is long and communal. Yes, but it is also deeply personal. Each house does it differently. Some leave offerings daily. Others grow silent and stop lighting lamps. Some speak of the dead often. Others not at all. Your own house has settled into a kind of balance. You keep the shrine swept. You light the lamp only on new moons. You speak his name when it comes, and you let it pass when it doesn't. One evening, a woman from the northern quarter comes to ask for your help. Her sister has passed, and there are preparations to be made. You agree, not out of duty, but because you understand. The woman's hands are shaking. Her voice is formal, detached. She is in the part of mourning where nothing feels real. You help wash the body. You do not flinch. You place the coins beneath her tongue. You braid her hair. You sing the prayer low and steady, so the dead might not feel alone on the journey. You do it all with the care someone once showed you. Later, as the women sit to eat a small meal flatbread, onions, salted fish, you listen to their stories. The sister, it turns out, was funny. She once convinced a whole procession that the goddess Bastet preferred figs over meat, just to see the look on a priest's face. The women laugh softly, and you laugh too. This is also mourning. Not sadness, but remembering. Quirky rituals surface again. One woman drops a piece of fish onto the floor and leaves it there. For her Ka, she says, a spirit needs food too. No one questions it. Customs vary from house to house, but respect always outweighs correctness. Historians still discuss whether these household rituals were sanctioned or merely tolerated by temple authorities. Did the priests frown on the personalization of grief? Or did they understand that not all mourning could be bottled in incense and scrolls? Perhaps, like the gods themselves, rituals had room to shape-shift as long as the devotion behind them remained pure. The next morning, you return to your courtyard and find a bird perched on your shutter. It's not unusual, but it does not fly away when you approach. It simply tilts its head, watching. You don't speak to it, but you watch back. Then it flies, wings slicing the air like a reed knife through lotus stalk. You're not one for signs, but still. Life continues in fragments. You mend a broken jug. You barter for onions. You help a neighbor birth a calf. These things do not erase loss. They crowd it gently, like pottery shards gradually buried beneath new sand. One day, while clearing the hearth, you find an old mark etched into the stone. A palm, crudely drawn, likely made by a child years ago. You touch it. Not his hand, not yours, but still a handprint. A reminder that others came before you and left traces behind. Perhaps one day, someone will find yours. That night, as you prepare for sleep, you do something new. You move the memory jar from the shrine to your sleeping space. Not hidden, not displayed simply nearby. Not as a monument, but as a companion. You lie down. The wind sighs through the gaps in the roof. Dust settles again. And somewhere inside you, the door creaks a little more open. Grief, you realize, does not fade. It folds. It becomes part of the blanket you sleep beneath, the cup you drink from, the bread you break. It stops demanding center stage. It becomes part of the chorus. And with that, you drift not into forgetting, but into rest. Morning light filters through the reed matting, delicate as lacework, spilling soft gold across the packed clay floor. You wake slowly, not startled, not summoned, just drawn gently from sleep by the hum of a day that does not yet need you. These are the best mornings, the ones that come without urgency. They let you remember who you are now, not only a mourner, not merely a widow, but someone rebuilding a life one silent thread at a time. Outside, the city stretches. You hear the low rumble of carts on stone, the call of a water vendor echoing through narrow alleys, and the distant clink of copper vessels. You sit by the threshold for a while, hands wrapped around a warm cup of barley drink. The drink is bitter, not unpleasant. A taste that reminds you of what survival feels like earned, not sweet. Today, there is a gathering at the temple. Nothing grand, just a communal prayer for safe passage into the afterlife for the recently departed. These ceremonies are frequent. Death, after all, is as common as birth. But this one is for someone you knew, a cousin of your late husband. He was older, nearly blind, always chewing dates and telling stories no one asked for. But he was kind. You go not out of duty, but because you remember his voice. At the temple, the stone floor is cool beneath your feet. The priests chant, their voices slow and low, like the river in its deeper channels. Incense thickens the air, and behind the veils of smoke, the statue of Osiris, looms painted eyes watching, unmoving. You add your own murmur to the prayers. Not words, exactly. More like breath shaped into gratitude for the cousin, for your husband, for the silence that now feels sacred, not empty. The rituals here follow a well-trodden order, but even within this formality, tiny gestures slip in. A woman in the back tucks a ring inside the folds of the offering cloth, probably a token from the deceased. Another smudges her own forehead with ash, a tradition believed to confuse wandering spirits and keep them from returning to cling. These aren't required. No priest prescribes them, but they persist. And in that, they feel powerful. You remember something your mother once said, long ago. If you don't understand a ritual, watch what people do when no one is telling them what to do. It stayed with you. That idea, that the truest mourning lives in the choices we make when no one is looking. Outside the temple, the sun has risen high. The stone courtyard is hot enough to sting your soles. You seek shade beneath a fig tree, and there you find others sitting, two women, mostly holding baskets of fans, watching the doves circle. One of them offers you a fig, soft and split with redness. You take it. She doesn't ask your name. You don't ask hers. It isn't needed. You sit there, side by side, fig juice sticky on your fingertips, and feel the heat ease into your bones. Later, a priest's assistant approaches you. He recognizes your face from previous visits. Would you help clean the outer shrine this week? He asks, not a command, a question. You agree. The outer shrine isn't glamorous. It's where people bring offerings unfit for the main altar-broken pots, wilted flowers, bits of cloth. But it matters. You sweep away ash. You rearrange tokens so they don't crowd one another. You leave space between them, like breath between prayers. And as you work, something stirs in you a small joy, unexpected and calm. Historians often debate whether women participated meaningfully in temple life or were merely caretakers on the margins. Evidence is uneven. Some scrolls suggest women had formal roles. Others imply they were invisible. But perhaps that's the point. Their work was often so seamlessly woven into daily reverence that it left no separate trace. You don't think of any of this as you clean. You just know that the shrine looks better now, that the tokens aren't lost beneath dust, that when someone brings a clay dove or a sprig of fennel, it will rest in a place of dignity. When you finish, the assistant nods without speaking. He presses a piece of chalk into your hand. For marking, he says. You understand. Sometimes people want to leave names or dates. You scratch a small symbol into the wall near the entrance. A wave and a reed. It's not a signature, just a mark. Something quiet. Something yours. That evening, back home, you find yourself humming again. The tune is old, almost lost. It weaves through your kitchen like smoke. You light a lamp. You place a fresh bundle of herbs on the shrine. Not because it's an anniversary, just because it's time. And that night, when you sleep, you dream not of the dead, but of the temple courtyard, sun-washed and full of figs. You wake before dawn, the echo of that sunlight still warm behind your eyes. The first rains arrive not with thunder, but with a hush. They drift across the city like a rumor, touching rooftops lightly, raising the scent of wet earth and crushed papyrus. You sit by the door, watching the drops tap-tap against the stone threshold, and for once, you let yourself do nothing. You do not sweep. You do not prepare offerings. You do not recite the prayers that now come as naturally as breath. You just listen to the rain, to the slow beat of your own quiet contentment. In the weeks that follow, the air softens. Grief has not disappeared. It never will, but it has become something else entirely. It no longer startles you awake or wraps itself around your shoulders like a wet cloak. It lingers instead in the corners of memory, folded into familiar objects. A chipped jug, a worn cushion, the faint smell of cedar oil on old cloth. One morning, a child arrives. Not yours, but one you have cared for in passing one of the neighbor's twins. She toddles into your courtyard like she owns it, dragging a carved hippo toy behind her, and demands a story. You blink. You were not expecting this intrusion, this insistence on life. But you open your mouth and begin. You tell her about the river, about how Ray pulls the sun across the sky in a boat made of gold. You forget your grief, completely for the span of the tale. Afterwards, the child asks, "Where is your daughter?" You smile, soft and small. "She's not here." You say it is enough. She nods, satisfied, and returns to her hippo. In Egypt, not every mourner was expected to remain cloaked in darkness forever. Mourning was structured. Yes, 40 days of ritual, temple offerings, the shaving of heads, the leaving of names on tomb walls. But it was also understood to be fluid. Living was not disloyal. Laughter was not betrayal. In fact, embracing life again was considered part of honoring the dead. After all, what good was the afterlife if the living could not continue? A neighbor mentions your name at the market. Someone heard you told a story, that a child laughed, that your courtyard is full of fresh herbs again. These are not accusations. They are observations, like noting the Nile is rising. You feel seen not as the woman who wept at the funeral pyre, but as the one who has begun to sing again while she grinds grain. And singing, it seems, invites company. An older woman visits. She brings you safflower seeds and asks for your help preparing an oil blend. Her daughter is newly pregnant, and they believe in starting early. You agree, of course. You crush the seeds, stir them with thick resin, steep them over warm coals. The scent is bitter and rich, like old parchment soaked in honey. She asks if you'd ever consider helping the midwife in the coming season. Not to catch the babies, she laughs, just to mix herbs, burn incense, tell stories. You say you'll think about it, but you know already that you will say yes. Later, you sit by your hearth, watching the oil blend settle in its jar. You remember faintly that women once kept tiny bottles of oil as part of their mourning, a habit passed down through households. They were rubbed into temples, into wrists, into the feet of statues. Some historians claim these oils were symbolic, a way to carry the scent of the beloved into the afterlife. Others argue they were simply practical, a means to mask the odor of grief and sweat. But either way, they lingered. Like everything else in this world, they left the residue. Your residue is joy, not the loud kind, not the kind that shouts from rooftops or dances barefoot in festivals. Yours is quiet, a joy that peels garlic in the early morning light. that smooths out cloth with warm hands, that hums a forgotten tune and lets the child with the hippo toy climb into your lap again. And then one afternoon, without any announcement, you return to the shrine, not as a mourner, but simply as yourself. You light the incense. You place a reed in the jar. You say a name. And you smile. It is not a grand smile. No triumphant swell of music plays behind it. But it is enough to shift the air. You step outside. The rain has stopped. The city is washed clean. Even the dust on your sandals feels softer somehow. Inside, the child calls for another story. You give her two. There comes a moment when you forget the exact shape of the grief. Not because it has vanished, but because it has scattered into corners, into gestures, into the quiet space between words. You still feel it, of course, in the way you reach for a second bowl at mealtimes, in the way you glance toward the river, as if waiting for someone who no longer walks its edge. But the sharpness is gone. What remains is something like shadow, or sediment present, but settled. The days are longer now. The sun hangs over the city like a question half answered. You spend more time outside, brushing fine dust from rush mats, turning over storage jars to check for cracks, listening to the market chatter drift through the alleys like wind. At the edge of the courtyard, a fig tree has begun to swell with fruit. You touch one gently and think of the phrase your grandmother once used. Time ripens even what grief cannot rot. You're no longer surprised when people knock at your door. A neighbor's cousin needs a linen bandage rewoven. A merchant's wife wants a jar of incense measured properly. A child brings you a broken doll and sits cross-legged, waiting for you to fix its missing foot. You do these things not out of obligation, but because, piece by piece, your house has become a place of small healing. You didn't plan it. It just grew. One day, the temple sends word. A procession will take place in 3 days' time, a ceremony for the restless dead, those who died without proper rites, whose names risk being forgotten. You are invited to help prepare the offerings. You nod, almost without thinking. It feels right. That night, you sit beside your lamp, a reed pen in hand, and begin to write, not in long phrases, just names. The names you remember. Your husband's, the cousin who told long stories, the old woman who gave you fennel seeds before she passed. A few names from childhood, barely recalled, but still flickering at the edges of memory. You write each one carefully, then fold the papyrus and tie it with a strip of dyed linen. At the temple, you help build the offering boats. Small things, made of palm ribs and straw, shaped into tiny skiffs. You place your bundle of names inside one and add a few drops of oil. Others do the same. Soon, the room is full of miniature vessels, each carrying a silent cargo of memories, hopes, apologies, songs unsung. Quirky customs have their moment here, too. One woman slips in a pebble, believing it helps weigh down the dead who are restless, preventing them from wandering too far from the do-it. Another tucks in a pinch of dried mint for sweet breath in the afterlife, she whispers. These things are not written in scrolls. They are not taught by priests, but they persist, passed from hand to hand like recipes and lullabies. Historians still puzzle over these little additions. Were they private acts of magic, folk remnants tolerated by formal religion? Or were they perhaps simply love translated into tangible shapes, because sometimes love needs something to hold on to? The boats are carried to the river at sunset. You walk beside them, your hands empty, your chest full. One by one, the vessels are lowered into the water. They catch the light, drifting slowly, flickering like floating stars. A few catch fire deliberately lit by temple boys, and the scent of oil and straw fills the air. You do not cry. You do not speak. You simply watch. As the last boat disappears around the bend, the crowd begins to disperse. But you linger. A child tugs your hand, someone's niece, unfamiliar, and says, "Did they all find their way?" You kneel beside her. "Some did," you say. "The others will follow. It is enough." She runs off, her sandals slapping stone. That night, you carry no sadness home. Only a feeling you can't quite name. A fullness. Like having eaten something warm and real. Like having lit a lamp and known exactly what it was for. You lie down, the scent of river water still on your skin, and you dream of boats, hundreds of them, stretching across an endless current, each one carrying the quiet weight of someone remembered. The breeze carries dust again, fine as flour and restless as gossip. It coats your shutters, your sandals, your forearms as you hang out linen to dry. But today, the dust feels more like a visitor than an inconvenience. You've grown used to its arrival, just as you've grown used to the quiet in your home, no longer oppressive, no longer echoing, just quiet, like the hush between verses in a well-known hymn. You begin the day as you often do now, grinding herbs, sorting bundles of reeds, checking the shrine lamp to see if it needs more oil. There's comfort in the repetition, but today something is different. A scroll arrives, sent from a cousin of your late husband, a man who oversees property records for a noble estate farther north. He's heard that you keep good tallies and asks, through the careful ink of a scribe, whether you'd be willing to help with the seasonal inventory. You stare at the scroll for a long moment, not because you're surprised by the request, but because of what it represents. Trust, yes, but also recognition. You, a woman once bound only to mourning, now being called upon for skill, for usefulness. You accept. The next few weeks pass with new structure. Each morning you walk to a quiet storeroom by the riverbanks, a place half shaded by palm fronds and thick with the scent of aging grains. There, you count sacks, weigh jars, check seals for tampering. You use a wax tablet and stylus, scratching numbers and symbols into soft curves that melt and harden with the heat. Your handwriting, once reserved for names of the dead, now records barley and lentils, goat hides and honeycomb. Other scribes pass you in the storeroom, their eyes glancing sideways. You notice it curiosity, sometimes amusement, but they say nothing. One leaves a folded cloth by your spot. Another sets a cup of water near your bench. These are acknowledgments, offered in silence. Back at home, your reputation changes. A merchant stops you in the market and asks if you'd be willing to check the math on his contract. A widow brings you a marriage deed and asks what it truly says beneath the formal blessing lines. You don't claim to be a priest or a professional, but you read carefully and answer truthfully. People leave your doorstep with a little less confusion in their eyes. In ancient Egypt, literacy was a rare skill, even among men. For a woman, it was rarer still, but not unheard of. Wall inscriptions and recovered papyri show evidence of female scribes, accountants, even religious officials. Some historians argue these roles were exceptions, limited to elite women or temple-bound priestesses. Others suggest that informal literacy, reading enough to understand, to manage, to survive, was more common among women than records suggest. After all, not every skill leaves a monument behind. You never set out to become anything in particular. And yet here you are, part mourner, part scribe, part quiet pillar in a world that once passed you by. You do not dress differently. You do not speak louder. But your presence is noted now, even if your name is not sung. One evening, while working late in the storeroom, you find a small object tucked beside a jar of figs. A charm symbol, made of clay and carved with a symbol for protection. No note, just the charm. You don't know who left it, but you press it into your palm and hold it for a long moment. A quirky practice, some say, to leave small talismans near spaces associated with the dead or the spiritual. Others claim they're meant to keep ill spirits from souring stored goods. Still others believe they're personal gifts, offered when words feel too clumsy to carry meaning. Historians debate their purpose endlessly, but you don't. You simply slip the charm into your pouch and continue counting jars. The next morning, the cousin who hired you comes by in person. He says little. He's not a man of flowery words, but he nods at your tablet and at the storeroom. Neat work, he mutters, and then, stay on if you like. You nod. You do like. And later that day, as you walk back through the market, you hear someone whisper to another, "That's the one who writes." It's said without mockery, just recognition. You do not smile, but something in your chest lifts, a reed in slow current, a sun-warmed stone, something that belongs. At home, you light the lamp again, not for grief this time, but for focus. You smooth a new tablet. You mark the date. And then you write, not names of the dead, but numbers of the living. Tied sacks, weighed bundles. Inventories of a world that continues steadily, without pause. There's a kind of peace that settles over the city as the festival approaches. Not quiet, exactly, but a sense of rhythm returning. Streets are swept, doors are painted. Market stalls bristle with garlands of dyed flax and strips of bright linen. Even the river seems to flow with more purpose, as if hurrying to meet the gods on schedule. You don't have a stall to decorate or a household of children to dress in festival clothes, but that doesn't keep you from participating. You prepare your own way. You oil the hinges on your shrine box. You grind fresh myrrh for incense. You sew a new hem on your linen robe, a slightly richer dye than usual muted pomegranate, still respectful, but warmer than morning black. In ancient Egypt, the festival season was a time when mourning was suspended, or at least softened. The dead were honored not through wails, but through remembrance and celebration. Offerings multiplied. Families gathered. Songs were soon not dirges, but verses about rebirth and continuity. You were expected to remember, yes, but not to remain forever in the posture of grief. So you go to the festival. It's held near the edge of the temple district, where a row of sycamore trees provides shade even in the heart of the day. There are stalls of dates and roasted fish, baskets of fig cakes wrapped in reeds, and women selling garlands shaped like ankhs. You walk slowly, not because of the crowd, but because you want to take it in. The sound, the scent, the way the air feels when people are gathered in joy without shame. Children dart past your legs. A group of dancers twirl near a painted pole. Someone plays a pipe so badly that it becomes charming. You pass a group pouring beer into the earth as an offering to the spirits. One woman sloshes a bit too much and curses in a whisper. She glances at you, and you both laugh without speaking. You find your way to the temple, where a priest is reading names from a long scroll. Not mournful, almost like a chant, as though calling each person home for a meal. Your husband's name is not on the list, but you say it under your breath anyway, and imagine him turning toward the sound. A girl gives you a token and amulet shaped like an open eye, pressed from blue faience. She's handing them to everyone, smiling with the urgency of children who've been given a job. For protection, she says. You take it. It's not polished. The edges are uneven, but you know better than to discount a child's magic. You drift toward the riverbank, where the festival boats are being readied. These aren't like the offering boats from before. These are large, vibrant, trimmed with flowers, and painted in vivid blues and ochres. They will carry offerings out onto the Nile, symbolic journeys toward the west, where the dead rest. There's a place to write messages, and people lean over shared scrolls, adding lines in crooked script. You borrow a reed pen and write a single sentence. You are remembered. No name, no salutation. Just the truth, inked plainly. A scholar might later question the meaning of such messages. Were they prayers? Poems? Contracts between the living and the dead? Were they meant to be read by divine eyes, or were they just catharsis? No one agrees, but you know exactly what yours was. It was an anchor. As the boat floats away, music rises behind you. Flutes, clapping. A chorus of voices that doesn't quite harmonize, but still swells with something ancient. You stand in it like someone stepping into a warm bath. The notes curl around you. They don't fix anything, but they hold you. And that's enough. You return home well after sunset, your steps slow, your hands still stained with pomegranate juice and ink. You light the lamp. You place the blue amulet on the shelf beside your oil jars. Then you lie down, your body aching in all the good ways, fatigue from joy, from walking, from being in the world. And in your sleep, there is no procession, no river. Only the scent of crushed herbs and the weight of your own breath, steady and unburdened. You wake to the faint smell of damp earth and something else in scents, perhaps, or the last traces of a funerary oil burned low through the night. The light entering the room is soft and gray, neither dawn nor full morning, and for a moment you remain still, unsure if it is habit or grief that still holds you in bed. You have long since stopped counting the days since the burial, but the weight of loss has shifted. It no longer presses down like a stone. It leans gently against your ribs, like a memory that refuses to fade. You rise not because duty calls, but because your body no longer permits lying still. Grief, as you've discovered, is often less theatrical than poets insist. It doesn't wail every day. Some mornings it simply lingers at the edges of your thoughts, whispering its presence without demanding tears. You spend that morning preparing lotus paste, not for a ceremony, but for trade. The blooms are fewer now, and you've learned to grind every part, the petal, the stamen, even the stem. There's value in what most people discard. You crush the delicate parts in silence, your hands stained faintly purple, your thoughts wandering to the fields near Abydos, where mourning families once left flowers at canal banks. It is said that in ancient times, mourners floated miniature papyrus boats, carrying flickering lights along the Nile, to guide the spirits toward the field of reeds. Whether this was ever more than isolated, ritual as unclear historians still debate whether such rites were common practice or poetic exaggeration, passed down more by scribes than witnesses. Still, the image clings. Flickers of firelight dancing over water, small vessels, carrying love and loss into darkness. Later, a child from the neighbor's house brings you a basket of clay pots to inspect. A crack is formed along the base of one, barely visible, and she wants your advice. You turn it slowly in your hands, fingers tracing the fault line like reading a whisper. You tell her what to pack into the flaw, what mixture will bind best. As she leaves, she tells you the pot was meant for her uncle's ashes. He died 2 years ago, but the family only now has the means to perform the final rites. You nod. Time moves strangely around death. Sometimes you bury someone and it feels late. Other times, years pass and it still feels too soon. In some regions of ancient Egypt, the mourning period lasted 70 days, matching the embalming schedule, aligning the living's grief with the dead's passage through the underworld. During that time, mourners altered their dress, avoided luxuries, and in some cases, refrained from sexual activity and bathing. A house in mourning, it was believed, was like a body in transition, sacred, suspended, neither here nor fully gone. Some elite families hired professional mourners, trained women who wept publicly at funerals, tearing their garments and chanting praises to the dead. You often wonder whether those performances dulled the pain or sharpened it. Was it comforting to hear grief echoing through the streets? Or did it merely amplify what was already unbearable? You take a walk to the edge of the village. The wind is stronger there, carrying the smells of cattle, barley, distant fires. A small shrine sits near the road, worn by time and weather. It's dedicated to no one in particular, just a general marker, a place for quiet thanks or silent appeals. You stand there a moment and leave behind a single date. You don't say anything. You don't ask anything. It is enough just to give. Later in the day, a group of women invite you to help finish weaving a funerary shroud. Not for someone you know, but the task is familiar and oddly welcome. The linen is pale and tightly spun, and as you work, your fingers find the rhythm quickly. Someone jokes that your stitches are too neat to be human. You smile without replying. Among the group, your silence is no longer awkward. It is understood. Each thread, each pass of the shuttle becomes a meditation, not just for the dead, but for those still learning how to live around in absence. One woman recounts an old belief that if a single strand of a mourner's hair is woven into a shroud, the dead can find their way back in dreams. You raise an eyebrow. She laughs and shrugs. Just something my grandmother used to say. Whether such customs were widespread or invented by grieving minds is hard to determine. There are so few written records of the ordinary. The grand tombs speak loudly, but the whispered gestures of the poor rarely survive the centuries. Scholars argue over what mourning truly looked like for the many, the ones without sarcophagi, without carved stele, without the luxury of professional lamentation. As the sun lowers, you wash your hands and return home, the scent of linen and reed still on your skin. You pause at the doorway, feeling the cool threshold beneath your feet. Inside, your home is dim and quiet. The oil lamp flickers on the altar shelf, its flame steady, like breath. You sit and take out the fragment of painted ceramic you found days ago in the soil. It shows only a curl of hair and part of a coal-outlined eye, likely from a funerary mask. You place it near the amulet that rests by the doorway, not as an offering, but as company. The objects seem to settle together, unbothered by purpose or symbolism. Not everything in mourning must carry meaning. Sometimes it is enough that things remain near. As night falls, the air cools sharply. Somewhere nearby, someone strikes a bowl of bronze, letting its ring echo through the street. A signal of some kind, perhaps prayer time, perhaps a child playing. You don't move. You let the sound pass through you, soft and shimmering, like the lingering presence of someone gone. In your dreams that night, no one speaks, but many stand beside you. Their faces are unclear, but their silence is kind. You are not afraid. You are not waiting. You are simply part of the procession now, walking not forward, not back, but together, step by step, into something quiet and golden. A morning begins with a low hum in your ears, not sound exactly, but a weight of presence that settles behind your temples, between your shoulders and the hollow of your ribs. You know this feeling now. It's the shape grief takes when it forgets how to cry, a stillness so full it hums. You move through the rituals of waking without resistance. Wash your hands with water chilled from the night air. Light a bit of sweet rush beside the door. Touch the lintel with your fingertips. Not for protection, not anymore. Just to feel the texture of something solid, something that has not changed. Outside, the dust carries the faint scent of old rains and the distant tanner's pit. You walk carefully today, not because the path is treacherous, but because it feels sacred to move slowly, like walking in a place where someone once spoke your name with meaning. You pause at the edge of a courtyard where women have gathered, some grinding wheat, some shaping dough. They greet you with nods and soft hands that guide you into the motion of the task before you know you've agreed. The air fills with flour and talk, but no one asks how you are. That question has long since passed. Instead, they hand you a reed basket and make space for your grief beside their own. A girl tells a story about a goose that stole her sandals and led her barefoot across half the village before it dropped them in a neighbor's basin. Everyone laughs. You do too, though your voice cracks a little. It feels good to laugh in the middle of work, in the middle of mourning. In ancient Egyptian homes, laughter was not banned in grief. In fact, some scholars believe it was encouraged, seen not as disrespect, but as the soul's way of remembering joy even in sorrow. Statues of mourners sometimes wore faint smiles, their expressions not of mockery, but of gentle release. After the dough has risen, the women begin to shape it into small loaves, some for the temple, some for trade, a few for their own tables. You work quietly, focused on the rhythm of kneading, folding, shaping. A child tugs at your sleeve and offers a lump of dough shaped like a cat. You smile and pretend it's perfect. He beams like he's gifted you gold. In some regions, children made small animal-shaped loaves to place at the feet of household shrines, believing they would chase away bad spirits with their stubby paws and flower noses. No one knows exactly where this belief came from, or how it spread, but fragments of tiny clay molds in the shape of ducks and cats have been found buried in kitchen walls. You take your finished loaves to the kiln. The air there is hotter, heavier, full of the scent of ash and warm clay. You wait your turn, feeling the heat push gently against your chest. The woman tending the fire nods at you and places your loaves in a separate row. She marks them with a stick, one straight line, one curved. You watch as the dough begins to pale and then blush, the transformation quiet and inevitable. Like mourning, you think. Time plus heat equals change. You return home with a warm basket and a cooler mind. In your courtyard, the amulets are still hanging near the lintel. One of them spins gently in the breeze. You pause to adjust it and notice a thread has come loose. You remove it carefully and sit to repair it. As you work, your thoughts drift not to the person you lost, but to the ones who remain. How they change around your absence. How you've become a slightly different shape in their eyes, not broken, just redefined. There's a neighbor who once avoided your gaze, but now offers you extra herbs without asking. There's a child who watches you as if waiting for stories. There's a man who once asked for help with his tally board and now brings you fruit in return. It's a quiet accumulation of acknowledgement, not loud, not dramatic, just steady. In many households of ancient Egypt, those in mourning were expected to gradually re-enter society, not with fanfare, but with slow reintegration. Tasks were shared first, then meals, then jokes. Not because grief was over, but because life insisted on including you again. You braid the thread back into the amulet and tie it with a firmer knot. The motion is soothing, like binding your own loose ends. You place it back and step away, watching it sway once, then settle. The shadow it casts is thin and delicate. As the sun moves across the sky, your courtyard fills with warm light. You sit beside the reed mat, shelling beans for stew, your fingers finding the rhythm again. A thought comes to you unbidden. You have survived something enormous, and the world did not mark it with trumpets or processions. It marked it with dough and thread, and nods from women who understand. You close your eyes. The air smells like warm grain and sweat. Somewhere, someone is hammering metal. Somewhere else, someone is singing off-key. You are exactly where you need to be. The days stretch longer now. Not in sunlight, the season has not shifted, but in the way time unfurls when mourning becomes habit. You no longer count days since the burial, nor measure them by incense cones or water jars emptied. The ache has quieted. Not vanished, no, never that but softened, like worn stone beneath your feet. What once shouted now hums. You rise as you always do. You bathe with a cup and bowl. You brush your fingers through your hair, not to adorn, but to maintain. It matters, you've decided, to care for your body as though it still houses something sacred. A woman visits you in the morning, carrying a folded cloth. It is pale blue and smells faintly of lavender and smoke. She asks if you might stitch a protective sign into it for her niece, who is with child. You agree without hesitation. It is not your craft, not truly, but your hands have become trustworthy. You know this now not from praise, but from frequency. In ancient Egypt, mourners often took on small community roles after the dead were buried. Watching the living helped silence the ghosts. Stitching charms, measuring grain, preparing ceremonial bread, these tasks became both distraction and devotion. You stitch the eye of Horus into the cloth, small and dark, hidden in the hem. It is said to guard the body from harm. You press the final knot with your thumb and hand it back. As you sweep your courtyard later, you notice the way dust spirals when caught in sunlight. It dances, weightless, unbothered. You pause to watch. The broom in your hand becomes still. Your breath slows. You are aware, in that moment, of every piece of the world touching every other piece, sun, sand, reed mat, your own shadow. In a past life, you might have missed it. But grief has taught you to notice the quiet. You decide to visit the west side of the city, the funerary district, not to mourn, but to observe. You walk slowly, past painted walls and open stalls. Masons are carving symbols into limestone. A group of boys chases each other with bits of broken clay, shouting as though nothing sacred surrounds them. You envy their ease. You admire it, too. You pass a woman painting coal onto a shabby figure. She does not look up, but you watch her fingers trace the curve of an eyebrow with such precision it feels like prayer. You wonder who the figurine will serve in the afterlife. Someone powerful, perhaps. Someone forgotten. Either way, it will wait in a tomb for centuries, ready to work if called. Ancient Egyptians believed these little figures could labor on behalf of the dead. It was a comforting, thought-delegated toil in the world beyond. Historians still debate whether the belief was sincere or symbolic, whether shabby figures were religious devices or emotional stand-ins for human connection. You don't care. You find the idea beautiful. A small shrine nearby holds offerings, beer jars, bread, lotus petals turned brown at the edges. You add a few lentils from your pouch, not as a grand gesture, but as acknowledgement. A whisper, I see you. I remember. The breeze shifts. You head home. On the way, you pass the well. It is quiet today. A woman hums as she lifts water. Another kneels to fill a basin. You feel no need to join them. Instead, you sit nearby, your back against sun-warmed stone, and close your eyes. You think of your family, of the person you buried. You think of the festival, of the stitched charms, of the girl who gave you a cat-shaped loaf. And you realize you are not alone in your mourning. You never were. It is stitched into everything here, into brick and braid, into meal and mat. This city was built on grief and grain, and still it rises. When you return to your home, the lamp is low. You refill the oil, trim the wick. The flame sputters once, then steadies. You sit beside it and breathe. You have changed. You still miss, still ache, still find yourself reaching, sometimes in sleep. But you also wake. You also speak. You also laugh, sometimes, even when it catches you by surprise. Grief is not a closed tomb. It is a hallway with many doors, each one leading somewhere slightly different. Today, you chose to walk through one of them. And the house, the sky, the stone, they welcomed you. And now, as the flicker of oil lamps softens into darkness and the air grows still, you lie back and let the weight of the day slip away. The city beyond your walls has quieted. The market voices have faded. The sound of footsteps, once sharp on packed dust, has dissolved into silence. Only the slow rhythm of night remains, crickets whispering in the reeds, the creak of cooling clay, the hush of a world returning to breath. You feel your limbs grow heavier, each one sinking deeper into rest. Your eyes begin to drift closed, but the images linger linen fluttering in the wind, a gesture of farewell by the riverbank, the scent of sacred oils rising in the heat. In this quiet space between sleep and waking, the stories of mourning wrap around you like a second skin. They do not ask to be understood or judged. They simply are, as old as the Nile, as vast as the desert, as soft as grief gently tended. Perhaps tomorrow you will return to your garden. Perhaps you'll mend a garment, or bake bread, or trace old names into the dust. But tonight, there is nothing to do, no duty, no vigil, just rest, just breath, just the hush of history cradling your thoughts like a mother quieting her child. Sleep now. You are not alone. You never were.